So I sent out a poll on the Monomod Discord server about what this video should be about. You guys responded that you want to see me adding your cell ideas to the game. So that's what I did. In this video, I'll step through how I added 7 cells to Monomod that were suggested by you guys. Cell 1, Killer, suggested by Gen1X. This cell acts like a super missile that also seeks towards the inserted cell type. For this first cell, I'll step through the general process of how I add a cell. I did this for the rest, but if I kept going over it for each cell, this video would be really repetitive. The first step that I do to add a cell to Monomod is creating the sprite for it. I use a website called Piskel, and I usually just modify a pre-existing texture. In this case, I removed the design on the super missile and replaced it with the square from a maker, keeping the same color palette. Then I add a name and description to the internationalization file. After that, I add a cell ID so that I can refer to it by this ID. I could just use a number or text and use that everywhere for it, but the point of this is that I can actually know what it refers to and be at less risk of accidental typos. Since a typo would cause the ID to be non-existent, it would most likely cause a crash, which is hard to miss. Then I add a call to the new text function to set its texture. I also usually add an entry to the convert ID table to let me piggyback off the code for another cell. In this case, I went with Nudger, since Missile is already converted to Nudger. There's some other configuration things that I added as well, such as is unfriendly for being targeted by friendly seekers. After that, I added to a category, in this case the missiles category, and for this one, I added it to the causes collision function and get HP functions, which dictate whether it should cause an enemy-like collision and how much health it should be considered to have, respectively. That's the work I generally go through for each cell. It's not too bad, since it's just setting up some values. Next up is the actual code for it. In this case, I added it to all of the places where super missiles are in the code, as well as to the cell holders table to indicate that you can insert a cell. I found the code for a seeker as well, and added the killer to it, changing it so that it would instead seek towards the inserted cell. Finally, I copied the code for a maker in the draw cell function to draw the inner cell and made the rotation be the killer's rotation. And it works! Cell 2, Defensive Shield, suggested by Gen1X. This cell acts like a mega shield that kills any cells adjacent to the protected area. For this one, I used the mega shield code for the protection part, and for the destruction part I used the code for a remover. However, I had a bit of a problem. I needed to loop over the shape of a hollow square for the area to destroy, which is kinda difficult to do. I had a clever insight though. I just used a 7x7 area, since the inner 5x5 area is already protected by the mega shield code and thus cannot be destroyed. I did have some issues where it removed the entire 7x7 area, though. I realized that I accidentally was not checking if I was allowed to remove the cell, that is, like checking that it wasn't something like a wall or protected. Once I fixed that, it worked! Cell 3, Hurler, suggested by K. This cell acts like an intaker that, when it can't take in any more cells, it starts spitting out the cells it took in. After it spits out all its cells, it starts taking them in again, and so on. K already made a sprite for it, so yoink! I used the intaker code for this, and made it so that when a cell goes in, it adds it to a specific variable for the hurler. Since Monomod can't handle tables in variables, I came up with a simple encoding scheme where the cells were stored like this. And it worked! Here's the code I had for it. However, after I took this screenshot, K and I realized that it was outputting the cells in the reverse order that it was taking them in. The reason for this was because the first cell coming in was also the first cell coming out, so it effectively reversed the cells. Luckily, I was able to make a very simple change to this code to fix it. I made it first in, last out by removing this caret and adding this $sign. That makes it match the variable text only at the end instead of the beginning, and it works! Cell 4, Spreader Player, suggested by Ethan1918. This cell acts like a player. If it can't push, it infects the cell in front of it. For this one, I modified the player sprite to fit the outline of the virus cell. I mainly used player code for this one, taking some code from the infectious cells and rewriting it a bit. And here's the code, and it works! Cell 5, Apiro Player, suggested by K. This cell is a player that acts like an Apiro power. I combined all 5 player sprites by erasing all but one of these arrows for each one, and then I added the Apiro power code. And it works! Cell 6, Omniplayer, suggested by K. Yeah, I basically did the same thing, but with Omnipower code. Here's the code, and it works. Cell 7, Parasite, suggested by Namsaray. This cell acts like a nudger. It moves forward, and if there is a cell in front of it, it tries to infect that cell. After it tries to infect, it randomly rotates. I got the image for this cell from a GIF that Namsaray sent of the cell in action. And yes, it is GIF, it's not GIF. I baited on the nudger code and the same infectious code that I used for the spreader player. And here's the code, and it works. In conclusion, adding cells to Monomod is sometimes tricky, but it's really fun to see your ideas come to fruition through this. Thank you everyone who submitted an idea. These cells will be part of Monomod 1.11. There are still some bugs that I need to fix, but other than that, it is coming soon.